Imagine waking up one day to find that half a continent, rich in resources and possibilities, had just been handed away for almost nothing. How could one of history's greatest military minds, Napoleon Bonaparte, make a decision that seems so reckless? The answer isn't as simple as greed or carelessness. It's a story of strategy, desperation, opportunity, and a moment that would reshape the future of two continents forever. In 1803, the world watched as a seemingly straightforward land deal quietly unfolded, one that would alter the map of North America and echo through history books for centuries. Some called it genius, others called it madness. But behind the numbers and treaties lay human ambition, fear, and a decision that Napoleon himself would later reflect on with a mix of regret and satisfaction. Stay with me because this isn't just history, it's a story of power, risk, and consequences that still affect us today. At the turn of the 19th century, Napoleon Bonaparte was not just a man. He was a force of nature. Europe trembled under the weight of his ambition. From the ashes of the French Revolution, he rose, not only to power but to the very edge of legend. Yet, while armies clashed and crowns fell, another story was quietly unfolding across the Atlantic, a story that would define the fate of a vast, untamed land. The Louisiana Territory, a massive stretch of land stretching from the Mississippi River to the Rocky Mountains, was more than just soil and forests. It was the key to controlling the heart of North America. For centuries, European powers France, Spain, and Britain had fought, traded, and schemed over it. But by the early 1800s, the territory had changed hands multiple times. France had lost it to Spain in 1762, regained it in secret in 1800, and now, Napoleon held it in his grasp once again. Napoleon's Europe was a cauldron of conflict. The French Revolution had overthrown kings, executed nobles, and left the continent in chaos. France was both exhausted and ambitious. Napoleon's rise to power had brought stability, but his dreams were larger than mere survival. He envisioned an empire that would dominate Europe and eventually the world. But to realize this dream, he needed resources, money, troops, and a focus. North America, distant yet vast, became a strategic question mark. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, a revolution was shaking the Caribbean. The colony of Saint-Domingue, known today as Haiti, was in the grip of a slave revolt, unlike any the world had seen. Enslaved people, led by courageous figures like Toussaint Louverture, were rebelling against French colonial rule. The revolution was brutal, bloody, and terrifying for European powers. Napoleon had hoped to use Saint-Domingue as a breadbasket, producing wealth to fund his European campaigns. Instead, it became a nightmare. Disease, particularly yellow fever, decimated his troops. His armies, once invincible in Europe, faltered against the tropical forces and relentless spirit of the revolutionaries. Napoleon's failure in Saint-Domingue changed everything. The colony he had counted on for money, supplies, and strategic advantage was lost. He had invested enormous human and financial capital only to see it slip through his fingers. And yet, the Louisiana Territory remained under his control, a vast, seemingly infinite expanse of land, lightly populated, rich in potential, and full of uncertainty. At the same time, across the Mississippi River, a new nation was emerging. The United States, barely 3 decades old, had ambitions of its own. Its population was growing rapidly, farmers and settlers were expanding westward, and the young country faced the challenge of securing land for its citizens. Control of the Mississippi River was vital. Without it, trade and movement would be stifled. And with Napoleon holding the Louisiana Territory, the United States faced the possibility of a powerful European neighbor standing in its path. Napoleon's advisors were practical men, but they were also aware of the broader picture. France needed money, urgently. European wars were expensive, and every soldier in Europe was more valuable than 1,000 acres of distant wilderness. Maintaining a colony across the ocean was costly, dangerous, and increasingly pointless in light of the Haitian disaster. Napoleon had to make a choice: keep the territory and risk more disaster, or sell it to a rising power that could pay handsomely and relieve France of an enormous burden. The choice, bold and unprecedented, was made. The Louisiana Territory would be sold to the United States. The sum? Approximately $15 million, a price that, in hindsight, seems almost absurdly low for land stretching over 828,000 square miles. Napoleon's decision was calculated, strategic, and, in a way, human. It was not a mistake born of carelessness. It was a decision shaped by circumstance, necessity, and ambition. He traded potential for certainty, vast dreams for immediate stability, and in doing so, changed the course of history. But why would Napoleon, the master strategist, give away what would later become some of the richest lands in North America, including fertile farmland, forests, and resources like gold and minerals? The answer lies in a combination of factors: the failure of Saint-Domingue, the logistical impossibility of defending such a vast territory, the immediate need for money to fund European wars, and a vision focused on global dominance in Europe rather than the Americas. The Louisiana Purchase did more than provide Napoleon with funds. It removed a potential point of conflict with the United States, a nation growing rapidly in both population and power. By selling the land, Napoleon ensured that France could focus entirely on its European ambitions. He retained control of Europe, where his military genius could be applied directly, instead of wasting resources defending a distant territory across the ocean. This transaction also had profound effects on the United States. Suddenly, the country doubled in size almost overnight, acquiring land that would fuel expansion, agriculture, and migration for decades. The Louisiana Purchase is often remembered as one of the greatest real estate deals in history, but it was also a turning point in global strategy. Napoleon's decision demonstrates how leadership is often less about holding on to power and more about choosing the battles that matter most. Napoleon's genius was, in part, his ability to weigh long-term vision against short-term necessity. He understood that European dominance was more important than American ambition. He also understood risk, that holding the territory could result in costly wars, loss of troops, or the collapse of his plans in Europe. By selling the land, he secured the immediate future of France and ensured that his military and financial resources were concentrated where they mattered most. Yet there was also a hint of irony. The land Napoleon sold for $15 million would become the foundation for future American power. Cities would rise, rivers would be navigated, and resources exploited in ways he could scarcely imagine. In a sense, Napoleon's choice created a rival in the long run, but in the short term, it solved an urgent problem. The Louisiana Purchase stands as a testament to how strategic decisions often involve trade-offs, compromise, and timing decisions that can reshape nations and continents. History remembers the Louisiana Purchase as a triumph for the United States and a practical decision for France. But it also serves as a lesson in leadership, adaptability, and the interplay between vision and necessity. Napoleon's decision was neither purely genius nor purely reckless, it was human. It was shaped by circumstance, influenced by fear and opportunity, and executed with the pragmatism that defined his career. It's the early 1800s. Napoleon Bonaparte, the self-made emperor of France, stands in his office in Paris, surrounded by maps and letters from distant lands. Every decision he makes has the power to topple kings, change borders, and shift the balance of power across Europe. Yet, at this very moment, his mind is not only on battles in Europe, it is on a vast, untamed territory across the Atlantic, Louisiana. Thousands of miles away, in the young United States, President Thomas Jefferson paces in the dim light of his study. The Mississippi River, the lifeline of Western settlers, is under potential threat if France asserts control over Louisiana. Farmers, merchants, and pioneers anxiously look to Jefferson for a solution. The fate of the young nation could hinge on the decisions of a single man on the other side of the ocean. Napoleon is a man of ambition, ego, and vision. He has conquered armies, restructured governments, and reshaped Europe itself. Yet even he faces limits. His troops are stretched thin, Europe is restless, and his dreams of creating a French empire in the Americas have been shattered by the Haitian Revolution. Disease, rebellion, and death have decimated his forces, leaving him with a choice that will define his legacy. Meanwhile, the Louisiana Territory is both a prize and a problem. Its vast forests, rivers, and fertile plains offer unimaginable potential. But controlling it requires resources Napoleon no longer has to spare. Every mile of land is a potential battleground, every river a logistical nightmare. The sheer scale of the territory makes it almost impossible to govern, let alone defend. Jefferson, on the other hand, sees opportunity. The young nation craves expansion, security, and a future beyond the Appalachians. The Mississippi River is the lifeline, and control of Louisiana could secure trade, agriculture, and settlement for generations. Yet Jefferson is cautious. He believes in the Constitution, in measured governance, and in careful decision-making. Buying Louisiana outright is unprecedented, even daring, and yet necessity drives boldness. Napoleon makes the offer, the Louisiana Territory, almost half a continent, for $15 million. It is a decision that shocks the world. Many in France see it as a desperate move. Others see it as a stroke of brilliance. For Jefferson, it is an opportunity that seems too good to be true. Diplomats, negotiators, and leaders on both sides move quickly, aware that history is being written in real time. But behind the treaties and the numbers lies a human story. Ambition weighed against pragmatism. Vision measured against reality. Napoleon's choice is not only about money or land, it is about focus, survival, and the calculation of risk. Jefferson's decision is not merely about acquiring territory, it is about securing a future for his people and a nation still finding its identity. This is a story of human decision-making at its most dramatic. Two men, separated by an ocean, bound by circumstance, and driven by responsibility, make choices that will echo through centuries. Napoleon, the Emperor of Europe, gives away half a continent. Jefferson, the president of a fledgling republic, accepts it. And in doing so, they set in motion events that will shape North America forever. The Louisiana Purchase is more than a land deal. It is a collision of personalities, ambitions, and possibilities. It is a moment when the human element, the fears, hopes, and calculations of two leaders determines the fate of millions. Soldiers, farmers, settlers, and diplomats all become part of the story, whether they realize it or not. Every map redrawn, every treaty signed, carries the weight of human judgment and consequence. As you imagine these moments, the tension in Napoleon's office, the deliberation in Jefferson's study, you begin to understand that history is never just facts and dates. History is human. It is the choices, doubts, and courage of people standing at the edge of possibility. And in the case of the Louisiana Purchase, those choices changed not only the map, but the very trajectory of nations. By now, you can feel the stakes. A European emperor balancing ambition and practicality, a young president daring to dream big, and a continent waiting silently to be transformed. What happens next is more than just a transaction, it is a story of suspense, strategy, and the unfolding drama of human decisions that echo through centuries. Even with the deal on the table, nothing was simple. Behind the polished treaties and official announcements lay a storm of uncertainty, whispers and secrets that few at the time truly understood. Napoleon, master strategist of Europe, had a hidden dilemma. Was selling Louisiana truly in France's best interest or a gamble that could haunt him forever? The Louisiana Territory was enormous, stretching from the Mississippi to the Rockies, an expanse larger than any European nation. Controlling it was not just about signing papers, it required armies, governors, and logistics that Napoleon simply could not spare, and yet the temptation to keep it lingered. Wealth, influence, and future power, these were the prizes of holding on to such a vast land. Could he really let it go for the price of a European war chest? Across the Atlantic, Thomas Jefferson faced his own mysteries. Could the young American government truly absorb such an enormous territory? How would it govern it? How would the citizens react? There were whispers of opposition. Critics argued that the Constitution did not authorize the purchase of foreign lands. Some even feared it could lead to war with France. The stakes were immense. Meanwhile, Europe watched in quiet fascination. Britain, France's eternal rival, sensed a shift in power. What if Napoleon's decision to sell Louisiana strengthened the United States? Could a new superpower rise from a territory he abandoned? Every diplomat, spy, and general wondered, was this a genius strategy or a fatal mistake? Then there were the unknowns within France itself. Napoleon's ministers debated privately, questioning whether money could ever compensate for potential influence lost across the Atlantic. Some saw the sale as a betrayal of French legacy in the Americas, a surrender without bloodshed but with consequences yet unseen. Others, pragmatic and wary of European war costs, argued the sale was the only realistic option. Even the land itself seemed to harbor mystery. Vast forests, wide rivers, and endless plains untamed, unpredictable, and unexplored. What exactly lay in Louisiana? Could France ever harness it fully, or was it destined to slip through their fingers? No one could say. Maps were incomplete, knowledge sparse, and rumors of hidden wealth, gold, fertile land, and strategic ports fueled both fear and hope. Negotiations were conducted with hushed urgency. Messengers, letters, and envoys carried secret terms, whispered conditions, and veiled threats. Napoleon had to balance secrecy, diplomacy, and timing, knowing that even a single leak could alter the course of history. Jefferson, too, operated in uncertainty. His government moved cautiously but decisively, aware that delay might invite disaster or lose the opportunity entirely. And then came the financial puzzle. $15 million was an enormous sum in 1803, yet it seemed almost trivial for such a vast expanse. Could this truly be worth it? Critics on both sides questioned the wisdom. Was France undervaluing its treasure? Was the United States overreaching? Or was this a carefully calculated move that only time would reveal in its full brilliance? The shadow of doubt loomed large. Each man, Napoleon, Jefferson, their advisors acted under pressure, with incomplete information, and with the eyes of nations upon them. Every decision carried weight, every hesitation risked catastrophe. What secrets influenced Napoleon's choice? Was it fear, strategy, ambition, or desperation? And could Jefferson trust that France's offer was genuine and permanent? Even after the deal was made, mystery persisted. How would the land be settled? How would it be defended? How would this shape the young American Republic and the balance of power in the world? None of these questions had clear answers. The Louisiana Purchase was a gift, a risk, a leap into the unknown shrouded in intrigue that would take decades to fully unravel. In the shadows of history, one thing became clear. This was not a simple transaction. It was a moment where human ambition, calculation, and uncertainty collided. Every choice was fraught with potential triumph or disaster. And as the ink dried on the treaties, the world held its breath, waiting to see who had truly won and what secrets would unfold in the years to come. Even after Napoleon signed the agreement, suspicion hung in the air like a heavy fog. Could France be trusted? Some whispered that Napoleon's intentions were not as straightforward as they seemed. Was this truly a generous sale or a trap designed to bind the United States to secret obligations? In Paris, ministers debated quietly. Had the emperor underestimated the consequences of giving away such vast land? Or had he calculated every possible risk with his usual cold precision? Across the ocean, Jefferson faced his own inner turmoil. The deal was unprecedented. Never before had a government purchased such an enormous expanse of foreign territory. Critics accused him of overstepping constitutional authority. They questioned whether he had the right, even as president, to commit the young nation to such a massive acquisition. Some feared that this could lead to war not with France, but with Native American nations, Spain or Britain. Was Jefferson being too bold, too ambitious, or perhaps dangerously naive? Within France, doubt also festered among Napoleon's generals. They had been trained to fight and to conquer, not to negotiate in secret or to gamble on distant politics. Many wondered, did Napoleon truly understand the long-term implications of this decision? Could he really afford to lose control of North America, leaving Britain and other powers to shape its future? Or was he confident that Europe would remain the stage where history as true battles would be fought? Meanwhile, American diplomats moved carefully, sensing that any misstep could unravel the fragile negotiations. Could France renege on the deal at the last moment? Could Napoleon change his mind, using Louisiana as a bargaining chip in Europe? Every letter, every envoy, and every meeting carried the weight of suspicion. Jefferson and his negotiators had to remain vigilant, balancing eagerness with caution, hope with pragmatism. Even among the American public, whispers of doubt grew. How could a young nation afford $15 million in gold? What risks did this enormous acquisition carry? Newspapers speculated wildly. Some hailed Jefferson as a visionary. Others called him reckless. Every frontier settlement that would eventually be carved from Louisiana remained uncertain and unknown wilderness that could either enrich the nation or overwhelm it. Napoleon, ever aware of perception, used secrecy to his advantage. He knew that revealing his full reasoning might embolden rivals or unsettle allies. Every decision carried political weight, and suspicion was a tool as much as it was a consequence. By remaining ambiguous, he ensured that both his enemies and allies were constantly guessing, never fully sure of his next move. The tension was not only political but deeply human. Ambition, fear, and pride collided. Napoleon had built an empire in Europe through sheer will and strategy. Could he afford to let emotions, second thoughts, or criticism cloud his judgment? Jefferson, too, wrestled with the weight of responsibility. He was tasked with securing the future of a nation barely 3 decades old. One misstep could mean political disaster or military conflict. Even after the ink dried, suspicion lingered. Some wondered if Napoleon's focus on Europe would blind him to the consequences of his American decision. Others speculated whether Jefferson's boldness would provoke Britain or Spain into challenging the purchase. The Louisiana Territory, with its forests, rivers, and untapped resources, became a focal point of doubt and tension, a puzzle whose solution would take years to reveal. And yet, perhaps the most fascinating aspect of this story is how human doubt shaped history. Decisions were not purely rational. They were informed by fear, pride, ambition, and suspicion. Leaders acted not only on facts but on the shadows of what could go wrong. Every calculation carried uncertainty. Every choice was a gamble, and the stakes were immense. In the end, suspicion became the silent partner in this historic transaction. It drove caution, sharpened strategy, and added layers of tension to an already dramatic moment. Napoleon gave away half a continent. Jefferson embraced it. And the world held its breath, unsure, doubtful, yet compelled by the unfolding drama of history. The year was 1803. Paris was alive with whispers, anticipation, and the quiet hum of urgency. Napoleon Bonaparte, the master of Europe, sat in his study, surrounded by maps that stretched across his walls. His eyes scanned the vast Louisiana Territory, thousands of miles away, yet weighing heavily on his mind. Every choice, every signature, every calculation could ripple across continents, shaping the future in ways even he could not fully predict. Across the Atlantic, in Washington, D.C., President Thomas Jefferson wrestled with the enormity of the decision before him. The Louisiana Purchase was no ordinary deal, it was unprecedented. Never had a young nation considered acquiring land so vast, so rich, and so far from its borders. Could the United States manage such an acquisition? Could Jefferson navigate the political storm it might provoke? Yet, within him burned a sense of urgency, a realization that opportunity was fleeting. Hesitation could cost the nation its future. Meanwhile, envoys and diplomats hurried between cities, carrying letters, negotiating terms, and observing every subtle cue. The stakes were monumental. Each conversation, each signature, each pause in discussion carried the weight of nations. Would France honor its word? Could the United States uphold its promises? Could one misstep lead to disaster, war, or humiliation? Every participant in this drama knew that history itself was watching. Napoleon, ever the strategist, considered the costs and benefits. The Louisiana Territory was vast, untamed, and full of potential. It could produce wealth, power, and influence. Yet he faced a cruel reality. Europe demanded his attention. Armies, borders, and rival nations could not be ignored. Maintaining Louisiana would require troops he did not have, money he could ill afford, and patience he could not spare. Selling it would bring immediate funds, relieve burdens, and allow him to focus where he excelled on European dominance. Jefferson, in turn, had to weigh risk against reward. Accepting the deal meant committing the young United States to an uncharted, ungoverned expanse of land. It meant spending money the country scarcely had, provoking critics at home and potentially angering foreign powers. And yet, the promise of opportunity the Mississippi River secured, Western expansion enabled, and the nation doubled in size was too great to ignore. Courage, vision, and a sense of destiny guided his hand. Finally, the moment arrived. In Paris, documents were signed. In Washington, envoys confirmed terms, exchanged assurances, and finalized the purchase. The Louisiana Territory, 828,000 square miles, was officially transferred from France to the United States for $15 million. In a single stroke, half a continent changed hands, and the course of history shifted irrevocably. The human drama of that moment cannot be overstated. Napoleon, the master of battlefields and empires, made a choice that some would call reckless, others brilliant. Jefferson, the thoughtful president of a fledgling republic, embraced boldness and risk. Both men acted under immense pressure, guided by intuition, strategy, and the weight of responsibility. Every heartbeat, every glance, every decision contributed to a climax that would echo for centuries. Across both continents, the implications rippled immediately. Soldiers, settlers, and diplomats realized the enormity of what had happened. Maps had to be redrawn, governments had to adapt. The unknown wilderness of Louisiana now belonged to a nation untested in such massive expansion. The balance of power in North America was forever altered, and the shadows of doubt, suspicion, and uncertainty gave way to action, determination, and ambition. Yet, even in victory, tension remained. Napoleon knew that Europe would not pause for his American dealings. Jefferson understood that challenges awaited in governing and securing the vast territory. The climax was not an endpoint, it was a turning point. Decisions had been made, treaties signed, and territory transferred, but the consequences, the political, economic, and human ramifications were only beginning. In that moment, two worlds collided. One man's pragmatism met another's vision. Europe and America, ambition and opportunity, strategy and risk all converged in a drama of unparalleled historical magnitude. And as the ink dried, a silent question lingered over both continents. Had they made the right choice? Only time would reveal the answer. The ink on the Louisiana Purchase treaties had barely dried when the ripple effects began. For the United States, the acquisition was transformative. The young nation, barely 30 years old, suddenly doubled in size. Vast forests, fertile plains, winding rivers, and untapped resources were now under its control. Farmers, pioneers, and traders saw opportunities that could shape generations. The Mississippi River, long a critical artery for trade, was now secure, opening pathways for commerce and expansion that would fuel the nation's growth for decades. Settlers poured westward, braving unknown lands, hostile terrain, and harsh climates. Towns sprang up along rivers, forests were cleared for farmland, and trade networks began to stretch across the continent. The Louisiana Purchase ignited a sense of possibility, a promise that the American dream could extend across a vast and fertile land. Economies flourished, populations grew, and the idea of manifest destiny, although decades away, began to take root in the hearts of citizens. Politically, the Louisiana Purchase strengthened the federal government and Jefferson's presidency. Critics who had feared constitutional overreach were forced to acknowledge the opportunity's magnitude. The decision showcased bold leadership, strategic vision, and the willingness to seize a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Jefferson's gamble paid off, enhancing both the nation's territory and its credibility on the global stage. Meanwhile, Europe observed in awe and sometimes concern. France had secured immediate funds, but Napoleon's choice indirectly empowered a new rival across the Atlantic. Britain, France's perpetual adversary, began reassessing the balance of power in North America. What had seemed a small transaction became a strategic shift with far-reaching consequences. Napoleon had solved one problem funding European campaigns but had inadvertently strengthened the United States, a rising power that would influence global affairs for centuries. The Louisiana Purchase also reshaped social dynamics. Indigenous nations who had long inhabited these lands suddenly faced waves of settlers, new governance, and altered trade networks. European alliances shifted, cultures collided, and centuries-old ways of life were disrupted. While the land acquisition was celebrated by many, it also set in motion tensions, conflicts, and challenges that would define relationships between the U.S. government and native populations for generations. Economically, the Louisiana Territory became a foundation for prosperity. Agriculture expanded rapidly. Crops such as wheat, corn, and cotton flourished in fertile soils. Rivers and waterways facilitated trade, connecting interior regions to global markets. Later, discoveries of minerals, oil, and other resources would underscore the region's immense value. Napoleon, for all his calculation, could never have imagined the full economic potential that the Louisiana Territory would yield under American control. Culturally, the Louisiana Purchase expanded the idea of America itself. Diverse communities migrated westward, blending traditions, languages, and experiences. New towns, ports, and settlements became hubs of innovation, commerce, and culture. The vastness of the land inspired writers, explorers, and visionaries. The story of human ambition meeting opportunity became a central narrative in America's identity. But perhaps the most profound impact was psychological. The Louisiana Purchase sent a powerful message. The United States was no longer a confined young nation. It had the vision, courage, and resources to seize opportunities, expand boundaries, and define its destiny. For Europe, it was a reminder that even small, emerging nations could reshape the world when bold decisions intersected with circumstance. In retrospect, Napoleon's decision was both practical and ironic. While he secured short-term financial gains and focused on Europe, he unwittingly planted the seeds for the rise of a continental power. Jefferson's decision to embrace risk and opportunity reshaped the nation's trajectory, laying the foundation for a superpower centuries later. What seemed a single, extraordinary land deal was, in reality, a turning point in global history. The Louisiana Purchase is more than a historical fact, it is a lesson in human decision-making, risk, and vision. One man's choice to sell, another's willingness to seize opportunity, and countless individuals' actions in the newly acquired lands reshaped society forever. Maps, borders, economies, and culture shifted, reminding us that the consequences of human ambition are never confined to a single moment, they echo across generations. The Louisiana Purchase was more than a land deal, it was a collision of vision, ambition, and human decision-making. Napoleon's choice to sell half a continent, and Jefferson's courage to seize it, reshaped not only the map but the destiny of nations. It reminds us that history is not only made by armies or treaties, but by the choices of individuals daring to act in moments of uncertainty. Think about it. One decision, driven by necessity or opportunity, can echo for centuries. It can empower a young nation, redefine societies, and alter the course of human events. It is a story of risk, strategy, and the courage to embrace the unknown. And it is a reminder that the power to shape the future often lies in the decisions we make today. If this story of ambition, strategy, and human courage fascinated you, don't stop here. Subscribe to the channel for more incredible historical stories. Like if you were inspired by Napoleon's and Jefferson's bold choices, and share to let others witness how one decision changed the world forever. History is alive and now, you're part of it.